Andy is a data-driven SEO consultant who loves incorporating artificial intelligence and machine learning into his work. He's got a decade of SEO experience and has worked with both startups and established blue-chip organizations. Andy originally got into SEO by building his own startup company for a turnover of £2.5 million per annum in less than 4 years by getting his e-commerce site ranking well organically. He's now a co-founder of Snippy Digital with Anthony, an exclusive SEO consultancy based in the UK but working with international clients. Andy, take it away.
Oh, I can't share my screen at the moment.
No?
It's saying
Yeah.
to allow.
Try now.
Perfect, thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Cool. I mean, yeah, before I get started, first of all, I've obviously just woken up to, literally 2 minutes ago, the news of Hamlet. So, yeah, very incredibly sad to hear that. It's not good. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about was, so at Snippy Digital, we have this idea about working smart and how, I used to say how 2 people can do the work of 20 using machine learning. I've crossed it out and put a little 3 because for those who follow us, we've recently taken on a new CTO. His background is in, his name's Mako. Well, I'll go into it now. So who the hell are we and why are we talking about this? Well, so here's the 3 people that make up Snippy Digital. So it's quite a small affair. We rely on sort of a network of handpicked freelancers to do some of the heavy lifting, but the majority of our work comes from the tools we build. So obviously this is me. I grew that startup company to 2.5 million in 3 years using digital methods. I've been in-house and agency side, and I've worked for startups and consulted for blue chip big organizations, and I've done a bit of writing for search engine land. Siganthan, who is typically the more popular one than me, he works for a VC firm in the UK. He's been featured in the Financial Times. He was voted one of the top SEOs to follow, which I'm still bitter about. And then he's a writer for Mars, Search Engine Land, he's written for everything. And then this is our newest member, Mikola. So we've recently signed him on as our CTO because he's got extensive experience in deep learning, machine learning, natural language, all the clever shit really. And he's got over a decade working in this. So our tools were reaching a point where we couldn't, it far outstretched our capabilities. So we took Mikola on to drive them forward. And that's the team. And we've worked with organizations all over these places. And I want to keep bringing it back to the fact the reason we're able to do this with just such a small member of staff is because of the platforms and the tools we're building. And I wanted to bring it back to why we're hell bent on working smart. Is our sort of core values is that we want to stay small. We don't want to grow large. We don't want to employ too many people. And that's purely because it's not because of any other reason than I used to have a big company. Well, I say big, we employ 20 odd people, and I don't think I was the best manager. It was a nightmare. It was just too much going on. So we wanted to stay small and agile. We operate globally, so we need to be able to work smart, and we like to white label for other agencies. So obviously if we had a lot of staff, we wouldn't really have the same clout if we were white labeling. It would almost be like they're subbing out to another agency, which in my head just doesn't work. But most importantly, the reason we're hell-bent on working smart is because we really want to do as little as possible, and just sit down on a beach and chill out. Now, I don't know whether that's actually the case, because the reality is we've been working non-stop to get tools and client work and everything happy. So it's not quite there yet. So the aim of this lecture, and it is a lecture, I guess, is it's not to boast about our tools or to talk about what we've been building. It's to explain the benefits of bringing machine learning and NLP and AI and all these other sexy acronyms everyone throws into your processes. We want to demonstrate how we're using machine learning, NLP, AI, and all these other sexy acronyms in our processes. And the idea behind it is we want to give you some ideas how you can start using ML, NLP, AI, and all the sexy acronyms into your processes. So the idea behind this presentation, I guess, is inspiration. And throughout every point where we mention what we're building, we give a resource for you guys to go away and look at maybe exploring that avenue yourself. So the benefits, I just want to get into the benefits. So we've talked about how it helps us keep small, how it helps us scale up, and how it helps us do a lot of work. There are some other benefits other than it being 2021's latest buzzword. I have found that if you tweet and shove the word AI onto it, it gets a lot more likes than maybe it perhaps should. So a little pointer there. So the benefits of developing NLP, ML, and AI tools. The first one is it's accurate, or it can be accurate. There's this adage in machine learning, if you put shit data in, you'll get shit data out, and that holds very true. It can be accurate provided you don't feed it data biases. It allows you to spot patterns and things that perhaps you wouldn't have otherwise seen really quickly, which brings me to my next point. It's fast. So we go into details later, but when we do keyword research, as an example, about 5 years ago, when I worked agency side, we'd have like 50,000, 60,000 keywords, and then to categorize them would take us maybe a week or two, because we wouldn't manually do it, but we'd be applying formulas for cells and trying to do it best we could. Now we can do it in maybe a couple of hours rather than a few weeks. It's scalable, so providing you've got the right cloud hosting, you can grow it as big as you need it. It helps you grow your company. You can basically, any idea you have, any process you have that takes you time, there's a way to, I guess automation and ML are different things, but there's a way to automate it, probably using that machine learning or NLP or something like that. There's endless possibilities. So genuinely, which is why we took Nicola on board, I can't stop. Every time I go to bed, I have another idea, and I just want to keep getting up and making something else. In fact, our Trello board of what we're building out is just ridiculous, and we've only been going 7 months. So I guess the caveat of that is you need to sit down and focus on one, which I'm just learning. And then it's accessible. And this is really the main point of this whole presentation, is when people talk about NLP, machine learning and AI, certainly me, 2 years ago, well, a year and a half ago, I was like, oh no, that's just going to be too complex. It's really not, but providing you get an understanding of the different libraries that are out there, because we don't actually write the libraries, right? They all exist. They're all open source. Like BERT, the algorithm Google uses, that's all open source. You can tap into that. So all you really need to know how to do is string the libraries together, and you don't even need to know that. It's quite cheap to get someone who just knows, some Python to string those libraries together and make these things. So I really wanted to make the point that it is accessible, and where I found a lot of value is actually learning what the NLP libraries do and the difference between one-hot encoding and tokenization, and what they mean and how you can manipulate these to get what you want. I found a lot more value in that than actually learning the code. Know the code now, but yeah, I just wanted to make the point. It's a lot more accessible than you may think. So here's the use cases. This is how we're using it, and then we'll follow each one up with like a use case study and some resources for you guys to go away and have a go as well. So the first thing we ever built with it, and it was because we were doing a site migration, is URL mapping. So we use BERT, is the algorithm we use this to match 2 URLs really quickly at scale. So this is really good for redirecting 404 pages where you've got a load of 404. So how we would do this is get all your 404 pages, and we'd crawl your whole site to get all of your URLs, and then we'd use BERT to match the 404 ones up to, its most similar live page. We use it for redirecting poor quality content URLs. So whenever we do a content audit and there's a load of URLs that literally aren't doing anything and haven't had traffic in 5 years or whatever it may be, but have a lot of link equity, we use this to quickly map where those URLs should be redirected to. It's good for internal linking suggestions. So again, instead of just trying to, and we found this with a few sites, so how internal linking is typically done is you would try and find anchor text that already exists and, you know, get the internal links there. And that is great if the anchor text does exist, but it, you know, it generally needs to be word perfect. So you end up doing loads of iterations of pluralizing it or whatever it may be. The beauty of using BERT to do it is it will find semantically similar URLs, and then all you need to go and drop into that URL and maybe create the anchor text. So rather than trying to look for the anchor text, let's look for the URL that is similar and put the anchor text in. It's great for two reasons. It gives you more internal linking ideas for a start, but it also means that, especially if that anchor text isn't available, but it also is using the actual algorithm that Google uses to find a URL which is closely related in terms of topical relevance. And then why we created it was for the site migration, where obviously if you're moving all these URLs and redirecting it, what's the best way to redirect it to? So fuzzy matching works. Of course, you can get add-ons and stuff into Google Sheets and use fuzzy matching, especially for site migrations. But we have found and proved that it's nowhere near as good. If the URLs are really similar, like you're migrating from, you know, Shopify to WordPress or WordPress to Shopify, and the URL structure is basically just going to have collections in, fuzzy matching is great. But for some e-commerce sites where we found that the URLs are nonsensical, if we pull meta descriptions in and things, we can use the BERT to map it instead, or H1, so it does work better. Here's results of two clients. It didn't really make much sense, this slide, so I should have probably put more thought into it, but here's an example of one where we did a content audit, and, well, both of them actually are examples of where we did a content audit and then we redirected poor quality URLs and fixed all the 404s and internal linking. This is all using BERT, other than maybe improving one or two pieces, which isn't enough. I mean, we've done a lot more since then, but this is literally the sum of really good internal linking, really good 404 mapping, and also content pruning and redirecting poor performing content that had a lot of links back to semantically relevant, high performing content. And over the course of a few weeks, you can see the traffic going. We did improve one or two blogs, but it was literally only one or two, so not enough to cause that. And then there was some resources here. Sadly, the person who got me thinking about all of that was Hamlet, and it was this particular article he'd written that got me thinking about this. There's a link down here, so it's how to map 404 URLs at scale using sentence embeddings. So sentence embeddings is another way of doing it. So if you see our version of the tool here, we actually use the sentence embeddings, but we found BERT to be more accurate, so we did two. But it was this article and the approach that Hamlet took that ultimately led us to developing this. And then I've linked to the Streamlit library. Streamlit is something that Hamlet and Charlie, actually, if you follow him on Twitter, advocate very strongly for, and it is because it makes what could be really ugly code into a really nice UI, and it's so simple to use. And I'm not just saying that because I know I used to get really frustrated when people said it's so simple and I dived in and it wasn't. It's literally you pop some code over your code and it makes the UI for you. It's really quite simple. So there's two resources there for you to start diving into. Keyword mapping. So we actually use the same logic to map paid keywords to organic keywords. So basically we had this challenge, obviously, as Google Analytics took out the keywords, the paid keywords. Well, sorry, Google Analytics took out the keywords that, you know, it says no set now or none set or whatever it may say. So you can't actually track through analytics what keywords are driving your conversions anymore. We're trying to plug that gap, or this is what's trying to plug that gap. So if you've got paid ads and you've got a hefty search query report, it works better. So obviously, if you've ever looked at your search query report, you've got all these wonderful misspellings and synonyms and all these wonderful weird way people type queries in. So what we do is use the BERT algorithm there to very quickly map all your search query back to, once you've done your keyword research, map it back to your keyword research. And you can see here, it gives it a similarity score. So we typically delete anything with a similarity score of less than 50%. And what that leaves us with is with a fairly high confidence, all the paid keywords that you can then track to you can basically guess from your organic keywords what the conversions are going to be. It also helps work out where our priority should be. So in terms of SEO, so I'll skip to this slide here. This is this sort of output, or an output. You can pivot the data any way you want, but this is an output where we can see once we've tracked. So this is part of our, once we present the keyword research, this helps us really zone in on what we should be focusing on. So you can see here, the size of the circle is the size of the organic opportunity. The further right it is how much those keywords tend to bring them in terms of conversion value, and how far up it is the return on ad spend. So from an SEO point of view, this is aside from any internal business decisions or anything else, or the state of the site, just looking at, if we were to say, look, let's focus on a category on your website that is costing you a lot of money. You go straight here for front steel doors as an example here for this client. It's got the biggest opportunity. It's making them a fair bit of money, but the return on ad spend in terms of ads is poor. So we'd be saying to the client, look, let's start reducing that. Let's start improving our SEO there, so we can reduce how much we're spending on it, because you're not making much for your ads. So again, I'd refer you back to this resource, because it's the same logic that we built the URL mapping to map those keywords to the organic and the paid keywords. Keyword categorization. So this is the big one. This is what's saving us a lot of time. So typically, we all have our own ways, but how we do our keyword research is so I'm going to use Gymshark as an example because everyone's familiar with it, and the site structure is really simple, so it's easy to try and visualize it. So there's two. We like to pull all the keywords and categorize it according to their site navigation. So in the case of Gymshark, a top level category would be men's, women's. It'd probably also be accessories, and they'd probably also be gender neutral. And what I mean by gender neutral is, like, if someone just typed in, jeans or t-shirt without actually saying men's jeans. So there'd be sort of 4 levels at a top category. At a second category, we'd then have bottoms, base layers, tanks, tracksuits. And then at a third category, we'd have, the facets, so like color, style, that sort of thing. So if you had the keywords men's black jeans, it would be categorized men's as a top level, jeans as a second level category, and then color as a third level. And you'd obviously do that for your 50,000 or however many keywords you pulled. So typically how we used to categorize them was some, logic in Excel. Maybe we do it via string. So if you see the word men or man or boy or gentleman, put it into men's. If you see the word black. But what we found is it used to take ages, and you had some templates, right? So for clothing companies, this is quite similar. So you could reuse it, but there was still nuances and differences between a gym site and a clothing site like River Island. So it used to take hours. I'd estimate 50 to 60 hours really to categorize 60,000 keywords properly. So we developed this, which basically vectorizes all the keywords, and then it compares the vectors, the word vectors of the keywords to the category names, and we use a library called NumPy to compare vectors. And if you're not familiar with NumPy, I'm not putting it in here just to sound clever. I put it in here so that, like I did, you can go away and research NumPy and research word vectorizations and see how. And all these libraries exist. Like I said, you really don't need to know about how it's written. You just need to look at, okay, what's a word vectorization for a start, and then like apply that logic, break it down. How do I vectorize these words? How do I vectorize these categories? And then NumPy is purely a library. It already exists, and it's got really detailed instructions how to use it. You just use it to compare them. The results are, we're able to categorize. So here's an example of that Gymshark. So you can see here, and there was about 10,000 keywords here, all categorized: men's, women's, men's, gym wear, general, hoodies, jackets, bottoms, color. we're able to categorize them in a matter of hours, rather than like 3 or 4 hours, rather than 20, 30 hours or 40 hours or however long it might take. And then what we also do is, this isn't to do with machine learning, but we have a little algorithm, really basic, and it applies it ranks each keyword in terms of whether it's red, which means it's not optimized at all. If it's amber, it means it's somewhat optimized, and if it's green, it means it is optimized. So when you roll that up into categories, you can really quickly see where you should be focusing. So for Gymshark, there's a huge opportunity for men's, and there's also a lot that they're not ranking for. So I guess the point of that slide was twofold. First of all, we can be using NLP to categorize keywords really quickly, and second of all, the pro of categorizing is being able to roll up into top level views of categories to really zone in on what you should be focusing on for the client, especially when you combine that with what I showed you earlier, which was mapping that paid data back to the organic data. You can then focus not only on the client in terms of opportunity, but what should we be trying to take pressure off of their PPC so that we can start saving them money as well. And then we also, and this is more recent, we use the same algorithm to cluster them as well. Sorry, not the same algorithm, it's not even an algorithm, we do layer some NLP on top, but it's mainly actually looking at the SERPs, and combining this with our categorization, we get this really easy way to see what pages we should be creating. So for example, podcast software, these are all the keywords that one page can rank for, and it's 80 to 90% accurate, because it's actually looking at which URLs overlap on Google, and then applying NLP on top of it to rope in any stragglers. So the results you get from this have surprised me sometimes about, actually we need to break these keywords out into 2 pages, or why have we got 2 pages covering this when we can do it all in one? So combining this with our categorizations, it's so much easier for us to say to people stop focusing on the keyword with the highest volume, let's focus on the cluster of keywords with the highest volume, because we know we can target on one page, right? We know one page can rank for all of these keywords rather than going for one high volume keyword. The sum of all of this is a lot more. And then if you pivot the data the other way, you get other interesting insights. So rather than looking at the cluster and all the keywords that fall under the cluster and the ranking URL for that, if we pivot it the other way and pull through the ranking URL and the head cluster, we can start to see if there's a URL that's trying to rank for too many clusters and where you should break it out. So here's an example. This URL here ranks for all these clusters. So the cluster, remember, is the head term of which a load of keywords fall under it. So all these ones have quite negligible figures, but the top 2, recording software and podcast software, they're 2 pretty high hitting clusters. The URL actually here was podcast software, but they were also talking about recording software within that URL. So we were really quickly able to see, break this out into 2 pages and capitalize on that. And a resource for that is an article I wrote a while ago, actually, for Search Engine Land, which is how to use machine learning if you can't code to help your keyword research. It basically isn't as detailed as all of this. It doesn't use the word vectorizations, but it does help you to start playing around with, it uses a software called Big ML, which is a really easy intro into machine learning. In fact, David Sotomayor, I can never pronounce it, Sotomayor, he's going to kill me for doing that. He introduced me to it, and it's got my brain ticking on how I can start using these for what we do. So there's a resource for you there. And then intent classification, which has been incredibly useful for us. We're able to work out for every single keyword. So what you're seeing here on the right is, out of the 10 results on Google, how many of those results are an article, how many is a product page, and how many is an other page type, or it can't be classified. So other page type might be jobs, it might be an about us page, that kind of thing. So I think a big point here is string logic to try and classify intent isn't good enough anymore. So as an example, how I used to do this, if it just had how to edit a podcast audio is obviously a blog type content, and in my logic I used to have said, if you see the word how, why, guide, classify it as awareness, or classify it as blog type. But the difficulty comes in when you see things like hosting, podcasting. I typically would have classified that probably as a transactional type page, maybe consideration. I would have done that because it's so short term. That's what I thought it would meant. Same with memory foam mattress. If you Google memory foam mattress, you'll see it's actually all blogs that rank. Whereas intellectually, you might have thought, oh, that's a transactional word. If someone's Googling memory foam mattress, surely they want to buy one. And they do, but everything that ranks is like 12 best memory foam mattresses, 21 best memory foam mattresses. So creating a category page or a product page to try and rank for memory foam mattresses won't work. And typically, it's where we wasted a lot of time in the past, trying to optimize these pages that just never would have happened. So this now allows us at scale to quickly see, okay, for this keyword, it's got 4 article pages, 5 product pages. So actually, that's a good one. It's got mixed intent. So we have the opportunity there to rank 2 URLs on the SERPs. One will be a product page, one will be a category page. Whereas this one, it's going to be mainly, well, it's all blog pages. So we've just got to write, it's only going to be a blog. No point in focusing on a transactional page. The result for this is being able to, again, get that top level view of what a client should be working on. So in this particular case, the client came to us and said, look, we got all our visitors come through our blog. We really want you to improve our product pages, our category pages. We want to get people ranking to them. And actually, when we ran the keyword research like this and rolled it all up, and pulled through the intent and rolled it all up, we actually had to come back to them and say, look, I know you want us to make your product pages rank, but 75%, we've done a keyword research, an exhaustive keyword research, and of those 20, 30,000 keywords you pulled, 75% or over 75% of them all are blog based. So with all the will in the world, you can employ us to, we have to be honest, with all the will in the world, you can employ us to improve your product pages. It's never going to happen. It's got to be your blog. So we'd love to work with you, but we're going to have to focus on your blog content because the intent just doesn't match. We're able to do that really quickly and save a lot of time. So this is typically, this was, their SEO efforts for a while. And then when we started improving their blog content, because we could see, like, look, that's where we should focus, stop trying to put all this effort into link building to your product pages and category pages, the traffic's rocketed up over the day. I don't know what this dip was, but it's going back up anyway. So we're able to, simple change, and it was purely the content they were writing was good. The site had a high DR, they were just focusing on the wrong intent. So not only a lesson in the importance of intent, but how we can map it at scale using machine learning. So this is a resource on that one, and it's that video by David actually, and this is what got me thinking about how we can do this. So David actually did a presentation back in 2019 at Tech SEO, how to use Big ML to map intent. So again, we do this differently now. We have got a pre-trained model over 2-3 million queries, but if you watch this video by David, it gets you that idea about how can I pre-train a model? How can I do this at scale? And this was the video that ultimately led to us creating this, just a bit more of a sophisticated version of it. And we're just scratching the surface of what you can do. So we mentioned keyword clustering. We're coming up with something that helps you with content briefs, although I'm seeing that loads of people are already working on that and it already exists. So we'll have to come up with a different way of doing it that's slightly different. Alt tag optimization, so just Google that. There's so many resources out there on how can I use image recognition to produce alt tags at scale. And they're really thorough walkthroughs. They're really easy to follow, just as an introduction. So just Google that one, or message me and I'll drop you some good links. Page title and meta description creation. So I mean, with GPT-3, which is, again, another one of these buzzwords everyone's talking about, but we've been playing around with it, and it will really help you produce. There are already things, you can Google that as well, but when GPT-3 is sort of mainstream, it will really ease up how you can produce these at scale. And link building opportunities. So as an example, we're working on something which basically rewords content. So you can plug a piece of content in, it will spin it back out in a way that is completely rewritten, and then you can use that to, you know, send to other people to use as guest blog posts or whatever. Perhaps not the most ethical thing of doing it, but it works really well. So to summarize, think about a process you do which takes a long time, and how can we do this quicker? So not exactly a groundbreaking summary, right? I mean, it sounds obvious, but the main point I wanted to get across is this. The benefits of developing the NLP, ML, and AI tools are that there's endless possibilities, and the main thing I wanted to get across is that it's highly accessible. It really isn't that complex. If you learn to understand the libraries, you don't even need to know the code. The libraries already exist, so you need to know a bit of code to string the libraries together, and then I guess the world's your oyster there. But I've linked to some resources here, and like me, you'll probably go down a black hole once you start delving into them a little bit, and you'll start doing your own stuff. Cool. Thank you very much. But yeah, here's all my details. Follow us on Twitter. Would really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Andy, for that presentation. We are getting, of course, questions from the viewers about the presentations, and as we promised, all people who are attending will get the presentations sent over after the event. Okay, Andy, thanks again. It was really cool. I expected nothing less.